Hey everyone, welcome back to Bagel TCG. I'm excited to bring you another Jarl deck tech today, this time version 2, with all of the new equipment and armor included in the deck, and a very different look than the earlier one we saw. This is taking a pretty different take on the deck, and where I'm probably at with him at the moment, but I will continuously post more and more deck techs as I test the deck, update it, and if we get any more spoilers, I think we might be waiting on two more majestic cards. I think there's four slots open, so a three of and a one of maybe. I could be wrong there, but I think we're still waiting for a few more cards, maybe also some commons and rares. So there will certainly be more deck techs. I expect at least one more after the spoilers, and then probably another one after that, after more testing. And yeah, of course, I'm a Guardian player, so this is my main focus. I think this is going to be the most fun deck for Guardian players to play, probably for the next 9 months until we get the Guardian Mastery set in August. So, yeah, super excited for Jarl Betrayed, obviously. He's also super badass, and his name makes me think of Dune. So, yeah, really hyped for this hero. Let's go over the new equipment and cards revealed, because there have been quite a few things revealed since the last deck tech, particularly his equipment and weapon. So, I think most people expected his very signature weapon that's here and in his Mangle art right here to appear. And of course it did. We have Summit the Unforgiving. Is a very interesting weapon because I really thought it was going to be two-handed based on how massive it is. And it turns out it kind of half is two-handed. A really interesting new mechanic called Heavy that's being introduced with this weapon. It says if this is the only card equipped to your weapon zones, it gets +2. So it's weaker when it's with a shield, but if you don't have any other offhands, like it's just by itself, it gets +2. So it is stronger when it's your two-handed weapon, but it also can function as a one-handed weapon. Really, really interesting. You'll also notice it costs 6 resources to attack with, which is really, really, really hefty. Definitely quite a nerf from Winter's Wail, which is, albeit Winter's Wail was way too broken and is a banned card, but certainly much weaker. It does have similar text though. It says when this hits a hero, create a frostbite token in their exposed head, chest, arms, or leg zone. So you do have to destroy one of their equipment zones first. The deck is, mostly built around that, so I don't think it'll be too big of an issue. But you do have to have at least one zone open. And then it is 6 resources to attack for 4 and give them a frostbite. Or if you have nothing else, it's 6 resources for 6 and a frostbite. If it hits, of course, it's not always giving the frostbite. But how good is that? I think it's quite good. 6 resources seems like a lot, but if you compare it to pitching a blue to play an attack, there's actually a pretty similar attack. I think it's called Icy Encounter. Yeah, so this is 2 resources to attack for 4, and if it hits, makes a frostbite. And then the red is 2 resources for 6, and if it hits, create a frostbite. Now, that's basically the same as our weapon. 4 when you have your shield, and then 6 when your shield is destroyed, and is basically the blue and then the red. And it's effectively the same because you have to pitch for the Icy Encounter and then play it, so it's 2 cards, and then 2 blues is the same thing. So we basically have Icy Encounter on a stick here. I think it's very good. The main thing is, of course, you're not using any cards from your deck. You're pitching them both. So very good against fatigue. You can just do it over and over. It's like having infinite Icy Encounters whenever you want them. Icy Encounter is, of course, not really a played card, but I would not consider the red a bad card by any means. I think it's a fine card. Of course, if it was 7 damage, it'd be a bit better because it'd be harder to stop. But I don't think it's bad. Guardian typically has an issue using a bunch of cards when your opponent passes, especially when you get 4 blue hands. This is a very common issue for Guardian, where you have 4 blues in your hand and your opponent chooses to set up that turn, and you don't really need to block at all, or maybe you only block with 1 card. And then you're looking at your blues that don't really do anything, right? And your weapon is going to be the main function of that, especially if it's for 6. Let's say you had to block with 1 of your blues and you have 3 left. Ideally, you can use 2 of them to swing with this and then arsenal the last one, and then you actually were able to use all 4 of your blues. So I think it's a pretty good weapon. Even when it's at 4, I think it's much worse, of course, but it's still a break point, and you know, a frostbite is a problem for a lot of decks. So it's not insane, but I certainly think it's his best weapon. There's not really anything worth playing over it, except, you know, you can of course think about something like Titan's Fist, but I don't really think the damage is what's going to get you there. I think the disruption is, and so the frostbite is probably worth more than just swinging for 3 or 4 with Titan's Fist or something like that. Now, we are going to, of course, play Stalagmite still. This is not, you know, a new card, but this is definitely best equipment card. You know, it's the shield, blocks to a temper. When you defend with it, make a frostbite. The shield's broken. Really, really, really good. Definitely the best shield in the game, and probably always will be, or at least for a very long time will be. And so, since it has temper, it can get destroyed, which of course is intentional to go along with Summit. So the idea is you probably want to block with this pretty proactively. You know, don't just spam it. You want to make sure the frostbite actually matters, but don't be afraid to use it, because once it's destroyed, then it counts as having an empty zone, and Summit will attack for 6. So we definitely want to use Stalagmite, like I said, efficiently still. You don't want to just throw it on the first attack and second attack you see, but you do want to use it, you know, somewhat early mid game, so you can start coming in for 6 with Summit here. Okay, now let's get into the other armor. We'll start with the legendary arms. We have Gauntlets of the Boreal Domain. These are pretty interesting. I think it really explains now how we're supposed to use Mangle in this deck. They already block pretty great. 2 block with Temper. Pretty standard nowadays. Really, really good. And it has a once per turn action. If you pay 2 resources, and then it says, if an Earth card is pitched this way, your attacks named to Mangle get +2 this turn. And if an Ice card is pitched this way, your attacks named to Mangle get Dominate this turn with Go Again. Of course, typically you cannot pitch both an Earth and an Ice card for 2 resources, unless you're pitching a red Ice and a red Earth, which is not very good. But if you pitch a card that's both an Ice and Earth, you'll get both effects. So ideally, you'll be pitching either your Pulse of Eisenloft, or you'll be pitching your Crumble to Eternity here, which are, of course, Ice Earth cards, so you'll get both effects. And then it's very good. Giving something +2 and Dominate for 2 resources is really strong. Of course, it also flows perfectly into the cost of Mangle, which is 4. So you'll have 1 floating. If you pitch any other blue, you'll get to attack with Mangle for 10 Dominate. And 10 Dominate off of 3 cards, it's a really good rate. With a pretty decent crush effect, especially for this deck. When this deals 4 more damage to a hero, destroy target equipment they control with a -1 counter. Of course, that's quite good. And yeah, you can also even make this only a 2-card situation if you get to tutor that Mangle for free with our Unforgetting, Unforgiving. So yeah, I think this is important for the deck. It's maybe not a massive upgrade over the already existing Guardian Arms. You know, they all block 3 with Temper. I don't think this is necessary to the deck, but it's probably your best option. Sometimes you might still want to just get a Seismic Surge or Tunic counter and attack with this more efficiently. Just 1 card in Mangle. So that's pretty good to do a 2-card 8. But I think the +2 and Dominate is actually pretty important, since we really, especially Jarl, of course, wants Mangle to connect so that you can get that open equipment zone and start giving them frostbites. Moving on to the chest. Tectonic Crust is really interesting. I think you're either playing this or Tunic in the deck. At the moment, I'm going to test this first and see how it works. It has block 2 with Temper, so already giving you more life than Tunic, at least 2 more life. And it says, when this defends together with an Earth card, create a Seismic Surge token. So what I like about this that Tunic doesn't do is that this is essentially on demand, meaning when you want that Seismic Surge, assuming they're attacking that turn, which most decks do attack at least once a turn, you can block with this and get the Seismic Surge. And you might be thinking, well, what if you don't always have an Earth card? Well, if you play Well Grounded, they have a 0 block value, and you can just always block with these boots for free. You'll just save them. You won't use them until you've completely used up your Tectonic Crust. And then you can just always block with these for 0. They don't get destroyed when you block with them. You can just block with them for 0 over and over, because, you know, who would normally want to block for 0? So you can just block with them for 0. and then block with your Tectonic Crust. And since they are an Earth equipment, this will trigger. So you don't need any Earth cards in hand to make this happen, which is pretty nice. It's essentially an on-demand Seismic Surge, and you get to do that 2 times since it has Temper with block 2. You get a block for 2, get the Surge, and then later on block for 1 and get the Surge. That's pretty great. On-demand Seismic Surge is nice. Into aggro, this is most likely better. It's, the games aren't going to go that long, so Tunic is maybe not going to be as relevant. This is also more life, so I think generally this will be better into aggro. And we're playing just a few 4-cost Guardian cards to go along with the Seismic Surge and make them really efficient. Of course, since you only get to do this twice, you don't want to play like a lot of 2-cost Guardian cards because you're really not wanting to play them without this. Paying 6 for a 4-cost card is pretty inefficient. So we're only playing 4 4-cost Guardian cards outside of Mangle. I'm not really counting Mangle. Of course, it is a 4-cost Guardian card, but since we usually want to use the gloves with it, this is more like in this deck like a 6-cost card. So I'm not really counting it. I'm playing 3 Mulch. This card's pretty amazing, especially of course when you get it for 3 resources off the Seismic Surge. It's 3 for 8, and if you fuse it with an Earth card, which of course you'll want to do, we're playing quite a lot of Earth cards. It'll say if this hits, put a card from their arsenal on the bottom of their deck. So it's like kind of a Command and Conquer that attacks for 8. Obviously not as good as Command and Conquer in the sense that it doesn't stop defense reactions and it doesn't destroy all cards. It just bottoms 1 card. But it's for 2 more damage, which is worth quite a bit. They can't just block it with 2/3 blocks. Against Aurora, it gets over Electrostatic Somersault or whatever that card's called. So yeah, really, really good. And I think is worth using. I'm playing 3. If you Tectonic Crust twice, you'll probably just block with the 3rd one. I don't yet know the right number of 4-cost Guardian cards to play along Tectonic Crust. Like I said, you really only want to play them when you get the Seismic Surge. I'm playing 1 Buckling Blow. Maybe this could go. I think quite easily it could go. This is more just a testing thing. It's nice because if it crushes, you get to put a -1 counter on an equipment, and this deck actually does kind of struggle to put -1 counters on equipment. It's really good at destroying equipment that has -1 counters, but initially getting that counter is harder than you would expect. So I'm playing just 1 of this. It's a pretty good card if you do the thing with Tectonic Crust, but once again, playing 4 just so you see them early enough with the Crust, but we'll see. Okay, there are, of course, 2 other equipment. Let me see if I can get them in here because I'm not playing them. I think, yeah, here are the legs. These say when this defends together with an Aura card, create an Embodiment of Earth, and they block for 1 with Blade Break. Yeah, I mean, the main issue is, of course, we're trying to use that combo with our Tectonic Crust here. And since these are 1 block with Blade Break, you can only block with them once and then they're gone. Meanwhile, we can just block over and over with the Well Grounded. Also, Well Grounded prevent 2 damage and at instant speed, so they're really, really good. If your opponent plays an attack reaction that is trying to get over by 2 or 1, you can completely prevent it with an onboard equipment piece. It also works against arcane sources of damage. It rolls over from multiple sources of damage, so 2 4 power attacks you can stop with 2/3 blocks in this. Well Ground is just a really insane equipment piece, so I don't think Rootbound Trunks are worth playing, unfortunately. Like I said, the Embodiment of Earth is fine, but we're not playing that many Aura cards, and it only blocks for 1 with Blade Break. I think even Civic Steps up here that block for 2 a Temper are better than it. So I think you're basically always going to play either Civic Steps or Well Grounded. So I don't really see a scenario where you play Rootbound Trunks. And then the other one is All-in Ice Cap. This card's actually not bad at all. There's maybe a world where you play it. The main issue is that you can only block with it once. It says when this defends together with an ice card, create a Frostbite token under the attacking hero's control. That's really good. Making Frostbites on your opponent's turn is really nice. So I don't think this card's bad at all. But since it's 1 block with Blade Break, you can only do this 1 time. And it's conditional, it has to be with an ice card. Compare this, of course, to the really broken Stalagmite. This is twice Temper with block 2, and it just is when you defend with it. There's no condition of blocking with an ice card. So I don't think All in Ice Cap is quite good enough, but it's certainly interesting. And if you want to stay budget, you're just buying the deck. I think you can just use the default armor suite and switch out the legs for Well Grounded, which are just a common, so not really going to cost you anything more than 5 cents or asking a buddy that has it. You can probably keep the All in Ice Cap over the legendary equipment headpieces I'm going to suggest, because I think, yeah, it's a fine headpiece. It's definitely not bad. Um, in my earlier deck tech, my headpiece was Coronet Peak. I have this in the sideboard. I'm really not sure which one's better until I do a lot more testing. Coronet Peak might be the better one. I like that early on, this is kind of a weapon-ish for you, where you can pay a blue to make the opponent discard a card or pay a resource. So if you don't have two blues to swing weapon, like you only could keep one blue that hand, you can use it. I think that's the main advantage to it and why I'm liking Coronet Peak a lot. But with fusing, we're often going to end up putting cards in our arsenal, or have a card left that we don't really want to arsenal. And I think Crown of Providence is pretty nice to cycle that away. For example, if we attack with Mulch, doing the thing we just discussed, you get the Seismic Surge, you attack with Mulch, but you fused an Autumn's Touch. You either have to arsenal that Autumn's Touch or just hold it in hand. So I'd personally rather arsenal it and then cycle it to a different card with Crown of Providence, really getting rid of that whole downside. This might not be worth it since it's a one-time use. There's a likely scenario where Coronet Peak is just strictly better and we only play Coronet Peak. That's going to take a lot of testing. So more just wanted to shout out Crown of Providence as a potential headpiece here. I don't know which one's better. I'm going to test both for now. Maybe Crown of Providence is better into certain decks like New that have Disruption and don't really care about Coronet Peak. So maybe I think I would probably at the moment play both and play Crown of Providence into non-aggro, like play this into Enigma and New, and then play Coronet Peak into aggro decks, especially aggro decks that don't play Tunic, because of course it's countered pretty hard by Tunic. So that's where I'm standing with the equipment. We do have some in the sideboard. I've got the Arcane Barrier 3. Right now I've got the headpiece, the arms, and Heart of Ice is the chest piece. I think I don't know which one you would want into Rune Blades. Maybe the gloves. I think gauntlets are probably the weakest of everything. You could also consider the chest, but I really like the synergy with the chest piece and mulch. So I don't know which one's best for Arcane Barrier. It might just be the headpiece, because like I said, the headpiece I'm most iffy on, so you might just want to do Northern Hood. I do think overall these are your best Arcane Barrier pieces, though. I don't think you want Lantern, because Stalagmite's so good, and you really want to have the open zone if you're trying to aggro like a wizard or something. And I don't think you want the boots either, because once again, into wizards, you're going to want the well-grounded. So yeah, I think these are the best Arcane Barrier pieces. We just have to figure out which one's best into Runeblade. I think all of them have a good merit for being the one you choose, but maybe the headpiece is what I would lean towards at the moment, or the gloves. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. The last equipment piece is Fiendal Spring Tunic. This is when we want to be more aggressive and when games go longer, right? So at the moment, like I said, shorter games, I think Tectonic Crust will get you much more value. But into longer games, you can get 5 or 6 plus resources out of Tunic, and then it's way better. Also, it lets us bring in our pummels and do the classic Command and Conquer plus pummel combo, and it lets us keep all of these 4 costs and actually genuinely use all of them efficiently with Tunic when games go long. So I think Tunic will at least need to be in the sideboard because of how important Command and Conquer Pummel is and how good it will be over longer games. But yeah, like I said, maybe Tunic is the only chess piece we end up using, and then you'll probably switch to, well, maybe you'll still use Well Grounded, but you could switch to Civic Steps. But I think there's a really good merit for this combo into aggro, so we're going to try this out first. Now, the main deck, I've switched to a Decompose build. One, I think fusing these Earth cards are a bit better, right? Like if we're attacking with Mulch or Oakenold, you have to arsenal one of these cards usually, and I'd much rather arsenal a really strong card like Felling of the Crown or Plow Under or Rootbound Carapace than arsenal like a random blue like Autumn's Touch. So that's a big thing, but also the cards are just really good, right? Like Felling the Crown, when it does its thing, is 3 for 8, and they have to bottom a card from hand. Plow Under is like another Command and Conquer, basically, where it doesn't even need to hit. They're also all 3 blocks, or sometimes even a 4 block. So I think we're going to try running this for now. I think they're probably the most efficient attacks he can run outside of Oakenholds. So yeah, I'm going to try those out for now. We might want yellow Rootbound Carapace as well. I think it's in the maybe board down here. There's quite a large maybe board of cards I'm also considering. It might not be enough decompose on its surface, so we might need their yellow Rootbound Carapace, but they're just really inefficient, right? Like they're a 2 block if you're not decomposing, and we're not decomposing that often. So probably gonna avoid it. If you have to swing one of these for the lower attack value at this, early on, you might just have to bite that bullet and accept it. Just get the effect still, and then all the future ones will be good enough. So that might just have to be how it is. Of course, you'd rather start with a Rootbound Carapace and then have these all turned on later, but yeah, like I said, might have to be how it is. We might have to play more Earth cards to be able to decompose more often, but we're playing a decent number at the moment. We're playing, of course, the Decompose cards itself is 9, and we're playing 3 Autumn's Touch and 3 Fruits of the Forest, so that's 15. And then we're also playing Crumble to Eternity and Eyes and Loft. So we're playing 19 Earth cards. Not a crazy high number, but also not that bad. But maybe we want more like 24 or 25. We'll have to see in more testing how that goes. Yeah, the blue Earth cards, we've got Autumn's Touch. Of course, it's just a 3 block, so pretty good. Probably the weakest one overall in the deck because it's the worst one to fuse with. But yeah, it's a 3 block. Fruits of the Forest, of course, I don't like that it's a 2 block, but this is an amazing card to fuse with because you can then discard it for 2 life, which is just really good. Basically a yellow Sigil of Solace after fusing, so you don't have to arsenal like a shitty Autumn's Touch. Instead, you can just get 2 life, right? So if you fuse Mulch, instead of arsenaling it, you get 2 life. If you fuse it with Oakenhold, you can discard it for 2 life and then arsenal the Ice card, which keeps it really efficient. So I think Fruits of the Forest will, I don't want to say always, but there's a good chance it's always in a Jarl deck just because of how good it is to fuse. And 2 life is nice, especially if you can like turn 0 it or something. Otherwise, the list is mostly the same. I'm still keeping the Unforgiving with Mangle. Originally, I thought this could not coexist along with the Earth package. But now that we have Gauntlets of the Boreal Domain, I think it's actually fine to coexist. I added Mulch in. Of course, I think this is way easier to fuse now that we have all these Earth cards, and it's a pretty good attack, especially with Tectonic Crust. We've still got the Spinal Crush, we've got the Oakenhold still, Command and Conquer. These are all really good cards that are basically always going to stay in the deck. I mentioned already this one Buckling Blow I'm testing. For blues, mostly the same. We got this new card. Sorry, this is the only new card I forgot to mention. Frozen to Death. This card's, I think, pretty good. It's 3 cost, which is the only annoying part. But it's an Ice Guardian action that blocks 3, and it's blue. So all of that's great. A blue Ice card, really happy to see that. And it says Ice Fusion, so you have to reveal an Ice card. If this was fused, you may destroy an equipment with a -1 counter. So unconditionally destroying an equipment is really nice. As I mentioned previously, it's actually kind of hard to put -1 counters on stuff, so you need to throw these disruptive attacks like Oakenhold or Mulch early on to make them use their equipment block. But once they get a -1 counter, this is really nice to unconditionally remove it. And then it says you may create a Frostbite token in an exposed head, chest, arms, or leg zone. The great part here is if they already have one zone open, you can then destroy a second one. Since this is an Ice card, they get 1 Frostbite, and then this second part will make a second Frostbite in the new zone. So this can often make 2 Frostbites, which is pretty good. If this costs 0, of course, it'd be way better. But costing 3 is kind of annoying. You're not going to resolve this that often. Most of the time, it's going to be a blue or a 3 block. But since it's an Ice card, I think it's good enough, and you're not like that mad at having to arsenal it off of a fuse. And it's, yeah, a blue Ice 3 block for something like Channel Lake Frigid, etc. There's no other new cards. I added these big attacks in. I don't know if they were in here before, but I think you do need some big blue Dominate to finish the game at the end. Blue Winter's Bite I think is a bit too good not to include. I'm even considering maybe yellow Winter's Bite. Still have most of the blue Ice 3 blocks. I cut one Winter's Grasp just for this buckling blow to test, but maybe it's just not worth it, and we want all of the blue ice 3 blocks, so we go back to a third Winter's Grasp. And basically the rest of the deck stayed the same. The sideboard, the only thing I changed here is adding these Glacial Footsteps. This is a card I kind of had forgotten about, which is really, really good in Oldhim. It's just a great rate. Like 2 blues for a 6 with 10 attack and dominate is really good. A lot. It's mostly played into slower decks like Enigma or New. I think it'll be quite good into them. Yeah, I think it'll be very good into them. Like you'll swing 10 dominate, they'll have to usually take some damage or give you equipment, and you're happy with either one. The only thing I can see changing in this deck at the moment is it really depends how good or bad the new matchup is, or if we need to care. Because right now we're playing Macho Grande and Glacial Footsteps, which are going to be really bad into new. A lot of this stuff is going to be kind of problematic into new, like Winter's Bite as well. Even like Fruits of the Forest, Autumn's Touch, and Winter's Grasp. Yeah, I'm not super excited for how that new matchup is going to go, but if it's really bad and significant part of the meta, we might have to cut the big 8 attacks, but they're kind of important into everything else, so we'll have to see how that goes. Cards that are worth mentioning in the maybe ward, Sink Below and Fate Foreseen are always something worth considering. E-Strike as well, maybe we need some extra go again. Earthlore Surge is pretty interesting. It's a really good rate, like 2 for +5, and it works well with all of our 4-cost attacks, like this into a Mangle or a Buckling Blow or a Mulch could be pretty good, so maybe worth playing that. I mentioned the Winter's Bite. Exposed to the Elements. This card's maybe important enough that we have to play it, since it can destroy equipment and put -1 counters. And the putting a -1 counter is unconditional. And I had just said a few seconds ago how much the deck struggles to put -1 counters. So this may just be like a necessary evil. Of course, the problem is it doesn't block. And I really don't like the idea of putting any additional no blocks in the deck. I think right now we're just playing 2 Blizzards. Yeah, and I'd rather just keep it to that. I mean, we're a Guardian deck and we're supposed to be blocking a lot. So I'd rather not play more. But it could end up being a necessary evil just because it does everything our deck wants to do in terms of putting -1 counters on and potentially destroying equipment. And it's a lot easier to fuse it since we now have the 3 Crumble to Eternity that are Ice Earth cards. So yeah, I don't know. It might just be a necessary evil, like I said, but kind of hoping it's not and we can function without it, because I just don't want to play the no blocks. But that is Jarl at the moment with the additional equipment, weapon, and Frozen to Death card. We will see if there's any more spoilers. Of course, I'll update this with a version 3 video. And then once everything's on Talishar, I'm going to be doing lots of testing. And I know my team is going to be doing lots of testing too with Jarl. And so I'll have some actual games and feedback to go with and provide further deck text on without just plain only theory crafting. I hope all of my Guardian fans loved this video and it was helpful with your Jarl theory crafting. I hope you enjoy him when he comes out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.